We don't rise to the standard. We sink to our lowest level of execution. The idea is, when it comes down to a performance, we don't rise to our best performance, our best run through. We actually settle to our lowest level of performance. So how do we bridge that gap? We bridge that gap through training. We don't just get there through doing the same things day in and day out. The value of training and the purpose of training is to increase knowledge, to increase skill, so that we can boost our performance. So if right now within your business you're experiencing issues, I would challenge you to look at your training. What is up? Devin here today to talk about training. So my single biggest takeaway, I think, when I look back at the over 13 years I spent in the military, comes and revolves around training. And now initially I didn't apply this to business. I didn't really even see the similarities specifically within our cleaning company. I was able to take a lot of principles I learned from the military about training and start to apply them accordingly. And I will say my single biggest takeaway in all of that is the value and the emphasis we put on training daily, really. So much so that now it is a part of one of our core values, and you'll hear the people around here talk about train daily, train daily, train daily, train daily. So first, what sparked this? Well, last week I was on a cleaning business owner Facebook group, and one of the other owners had reached out to a few different people asking about training and how she should be going about things, and she was sort of talking about some symptoms in her business. And here's what she was saying. She was saying, have these three amazing cleaners, but they're only really amazing when I'm there on the job site. But when I'm not there on the job site, they sometimes miss things. Sometimes they'll forget to greet the customer. All these different symptoms of a larger issue. Now look, I'm not here to sit here and say that every person is the right person and that hiring doesn't matter, but ultimately people either want to improve or they don't. There's really no in between. Most people I've found that I've hired that have made it through my initial screening do want to improve. The challenge is I'm not holding them accountable, or I'm not training them properly so that they can improve. And so when I listened to what this other business owner had to say, having experienced very similar situations early on, I knew immediately what her biggest challenge was. And her biggest challenge was she didn't understand that training is continuous. She didn't understand that it's not enough to train her new cleaners on how to clean, to follow her process to begin with, but then also to give them follow-on and continued training so that they can grow and improve in some of the areas where, they were below standard or maybe just meeting the standard when she first hired them on. So where did I get this from? Well, a lot of it came from my time in the military, where I was able to see in action a lot of these things that we talk about. Training diminishes over time. You need to train daily to improve. All of these buzz phrases that we continually hear as entrepreneurs, I was able to actually see play out through my time in the military. So let me just define what training is to me before I go any further. Training to me is just the process of improving knowledge and skills to boost performance. So there's a couple key things here. It's improving our knowledge and our skills for what? To boost performance. So if you think about this in business, for a sales representative, a performance is going to be that sale they need to make. For operations, it might be the daily execution, the execution of routes. If you're focused on logistics, the execution of delivery of the product, however that looks. For somebody in marketing, it might be running that campaign. But all training is focused around boosting some sort of performance. Now, the reason that's important is because oftentimes as business owners, we get the two confused. We think that performance, having to perform on the day-to-day, is training. The problem is training is a lot more broad than that. We're missing a lot of pieces that are then not allowing us to get better. You may be familiar with this phrase. It's one that we often hear in the military, but it goes, we don't rise to the standard. We sink to our lowest level of execution. There's various different versions of that, but the idea is when it comes down to a performance, we don't rise to our best performance, our best run through, we actually settle to our lowest level of performance. So going back to my example of cleaning company, if a perfect 10 performance for that cleaning company is the customer gets greeted, they follow their process from A to Z, they get done on time, they go above and beyond on certain areas, etc., etc., and that is to standard, a perfect performance. However, the people on that clean, let's say only 50% of the time, are performing in that manner. We can't expect for every performance, aka every clean, to go over perfectly. We can expect their lowest standard, let's say they get half of the things right, to be the result on any given performance. It's the same in the military. It's the same in football. It's the same in motocross. It's the same everywhere. The challenge is it's easy for us to think about it in terms of a sports team, and it's easy for us to overlook it in terms of our business. So how do we bridge that gap? We bridge that gap through training. The way we get from subpar performance or performing at 50% most of the time, how do we get to performing to 100% of the time? Well, we get there through training. We don't just get there through doing the same things day in and day out. When I shared the definition of training earlier, it is to increase knowledge and skill. Not to maintain, but to increase. We have to put emphasis on it. Now, the greatest example I have of this and what really changed my mind, now I know that it seems like a lot, right? It seems like, well, no, it makes sense. For our salespeople, they're selling daily. Like that's enough for them. Or for our operations people, they're lining up the schedule. They're working logistics daily. That should be enough for them. But I can't stress it to you enough. The best example I have of seeing this in action actually came from the military. A few years back, I was able to go to a school to learn how to do what we call CQB, close quarters battle, at the highest levels. This is a really, at least from where I come from, prestigious school. It's physically demanding, it's mentally demanding. And the reason is because we have a very strict regimen of where we go from basically a very, very low standard. They don't assume anybody's at any standard before entering this school to the tip top, highest standard, best in the world type level for doing this thing. And we do so over, I think it's a 10 or a 13 week period. And the fact that somebody can go from a very basic level, when I say basic level, understand that everybody that goes to school is already within special operations. It is a pretty high standard of already doing this, but within the world of doing close quarters battle is a very, very low level skill. And to get there that quickly, the training has to be on point. It's almost scientific, if you will, the way that they go about it. So reflecting on that and being able to see myself attending that school going from zero to top of the top and then being tested to see if I do rise to my highest level or fall to my lowest standard, it really proved out this whole concept for me, because I had heard this in the military. The entire time I had heard, hey, you don't rise to your highest level of performance, you fall to your lowest standard of performance. And to see that out was just life-changing. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So when you get into the school, the first thing that they do is they get you a solid shooting foundation. So I go to the school and we're just shooting. And I'm talking like hundreds of rounds a day. We get through this school. Oftentimes people can't go to the school or they end up having to leave because their lead levels get too high. We do so much shooting that the actual lead levels within your body get to a point where the military just deems it like not safe. And the only way to fix that is to just not shoot, not be around ammunition for an extended period of time and let your body clear the toxin and get better. And then later on, you may or may not get an opportunity to go back to this school. It's a lot of shooting, and it's day in, day out, and it's all centered around making you the best possible shooter. So through every phase of this school, there's what's called an evaluation, and this is where it just slaughters the class. So when we first start in this school, there's, I don't know, maybe like 60 students or so. And then by the time we graduate, I think my class graduated with like 12 guys. And so every phase, it's like every couple weeks, once you really start to get into the school, there's an evaluation, and it's just a slaughter. It's a test, and it's a very firm and hard test. There are zero exceptions. You pass it or you fail. That's it. You fail, you go home. And so once you start to get through, there's certain evals where the majority of the class ends up leaving. So every eval, a good portion of the class leaves. There's a huge old thing. You don't really know if you pass or you fail. You go through, you run the test, and then basically you go out into the hallway hours later, and you just basically check to see if your name on the roster board is green or red. So it's pretty stressful. You run the test, and then you just sit there and you just wait. And through certain evaluations, you might lose, I don't know, 1, 5, 6 guys. But then there's going to be evaluations where you lose a majority. So you just see all this red on this roster. And those evaluations are the highest stress. Well, once you get through a good portion, I think the last eval is eval 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, I don't know, somewhere around there. But once you get to those, you sort of feel like, okay, I just got to keep doing what I've been doing thus far, and I'm going to make it through. With the exception of the final eval. Nobody wants to get dropped on the final eval because you made it through the entire course. You made it through all the pain, all the suck, all the mental draining, and you just got to perform one last time, pass the test, and you're good to go. So the stress sort of comes back. What I'm getting at is the stress is like hit or miss on these evals until you get to that final one. So for our class, we get to towards the final eval. And so this eval was supposed to be on a Friday. If I remember right, they bring us in on Thursday and they get us to really lower our guard. They pitch it as like, hey, come in, do some maintenance on your equipment, guys, relax. So much so, like I was in gym shorts in a gym shirt because for me, I was just going to come in. I didn't need to be in a certain type of uniform or anything like that. I was going to relax, do maintenance, prep my gear, and then I was going to go to the gym. And so for me, logically, I just throw on some gym clothes. So thank God I had on some workout shoes, but I just had gym shorts and a shirt. And I remember we come in and they tell us, hey, go over to the gym and get your equipment prepped. And there's a certain way that we prep our equipment because part of this school and why we're doing CQB is in an urgent situation. I think of like a hostage arrest. So generally in those types of environments, in those types of situations, when we know we could be on call for something like that, or even just when we're deployed to combat operations, we keep our gear prepped in a certain manner so that we can just grab it and go and be out the door. So they tell us, hey, prep your gear for tomorrow or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So we prep our gear. And then the next thing you know, from what I remember is like maybe 30 minutes after I'd prepped my gear, I was actually getting ready to leave there. They call us all in and all of a sudden we see an instructor. He pulls us in and he's like, hey man, and they start briefing us on a situation. And so all of a sudden we snap from being relaxed and just chill to holy crap, we've got a situation. And this is really as real as it gets. Obviously, it's a controlled environment. Obviously, when they're talking about a hostage situation in a hotel, initially, like, trying to like grab our bearings, like figure out like, is this something that's real they're telling us about, or is this something in scenario, in this training, in this school? And it just takes a couple minutes and then we sort of calibrate and we realize, oh, okay, this is a training environment. This is a real situation, but within the training environment of the schoolhouse. And so once we realize that, holy crap, we realize, oh no, this is our eval. They tricked us. And so they got us to come in and lower our guard. And I remember as soon as I realized that, things just started to flow. It was okay, let's everybody throw their gear on, certain positions start doing their planning. I started doing my planning. We started getting as much information as we could about what we call is the target. And so I'm trying to understand, hey, what is the situation? And it was a hostage situation. We had Americans trapped in this hotel was the idea. And so just based on our training, based on who we are, what it is we do, immediately we're like, hey, we got Americans in a hotel. We got bad guys there. How many bad guys do we have? We start to get an idea of the situation because we're going to go in to get those Americans. That's priority number one, and mission success. Mission success is getting those Americans, saving their lives, getting them out of the hotel. So we start mapping everything out, and immediately the vehicle's already there because we have to mobilize. This is happening in the scenario. This is happening in real time as we're talking. Every minute we're taking is a minute wasted, a minute where potentially an American's life is at stake. And so all this is happening as we're putting our stuff on. We're moving to the vehicles to get from our site to the hotel. And I just remember as we're going through this, it was just second nature. Everything just felt so natural. And I was able to really focus on my specialty, which was trying to give our best guess at where those Americans might be, so that when we enter into that hotel, we're entering to as close to where they possibly could be, so that we gave them their best chance of survival. And then also there's a little bit of life preservation on our part. Now, going into a situation like this is real life. We're going in there fully knowing like people on our side are probably dying, and they're probably dying to preserve the life of those Americans. But hey, that's what we signed up for, and this is just kind of how it goes. And so it becomes all about them. And so we come up with our plan. We get there, we launch, we run to the breach. We actually ended up splitting up. We breached from two different points. And I just remember like running through this hotel as we're trying to make our way to these Americans, just how just like smooth and natural everything kind of felt. And next thing you know, we're done through the scenario. We get to there were a couple hiccups for sure, but we were a mission success. Everything felt good. We kind of knew as a team when we came out of there that we had passed. Like everything had went as successful as it could have. Nobody had made like any major violation or dropped the ball or nothing like that. So we all felt very, very good. We walked away. We ended up passing our entire, we call it cell. It was our team. So there was 5 of us that went in. Our entire cell ended up passing. And I just remember sitting there and thinking like, holy crap, what just happened? Like it all happened so fast. And it was a success in this sense. And I think because there was such a close connection to all those weeks and weeks of training leading up to that performance, for me to really see how clear it was that, wow, you really don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your lowest level of standard. Now, our standard at that time was very high, so it felt really good. But that moment, that entire situation there just really stuck with me continuing on through my career. Now, this wasn't like super early on, and it wasn't late. It was towards the latter part. It was a very actionable thing that I went through and I experienced that wasn't just somebody telling me, hey, you rise to you don't rise to the standard, you fall to your lowest level. It was me actually living it out that stuck with me. And so having that experience to take with me into business, oftentimes when somebody mentions that they don't quite have the skill, they don't quite have the knowledge, they're not quite getting the performance that they anticipate or they'd like to get, I always immediately go to training. Well, what does your training look like? And more often than not, actually, I truly cannot think of an example where somebody's said, oh, training, yeah, we got training. Here's our training. This is the training we're doing. And I'm like, oh, it must be some other issue. When it comes to performance, so long as that person that is doing the performing wants to increase their level of knowledge and their level of skill, it always comes down to what they're actually doing for training, or better said, what they're not doing for training. And it just comes down to they'll do a little bit of training initially to get the person up to speed, and then they just leave it and they forget about it. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just not really understanding the value of training and the purpose of training. And that is, again, to increase knowledge, to increase skill, so that we can boost our performance. So if right now within your business, you're experiencing issues, whether it's with yourself not being able to hit the performance that you desire, or it's an employee within operations or within sales or what have you, I would challenge you to look at your training. How much are you training? Probably not enough. And then once you've acknowledged that, now you can get into how you're training, because there is an actual way to train that's beneficial and productive, and to train in a way that's counterproductive and just a complete waste of time. So hopefully that's been valuable for you. That's all I have for now. Until next time, see ya.